Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video I will be doing a series review of the Winternight Trilogy by Katherine Arden. And so this is actually a series that has been quite popular here on BookTube, and I was very hesitant to pick it up, but I've heard so many great things about it. And I feel like it's best to look at this series as a whole, and so I wanted to do just kind of a general overview of the series and my thoughts and opinions. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to kind of talk about the 3 books in here and my rating for them, kind of the general synopsis of the series and pros and cons and all of that fun stuff. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm sure you guys are all familiar with at least the first book in this trilogy, and that one is first The Bear and the Nightingale, and so I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. The next one is The Girl in the Tower, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars, and the finale, The Winter of the Witch, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. So basically the general synopsis of the story is it takes place, I want to say, in the 14 or 1500s in Russia, and it's based off of Russian folklore and kind of fairy tales. So it follows a girl named Vaza who's grown up in this little village in Russia, and she has this special ability where she has this sight, as they call it, where she can see kind of house like spirits, almost like they're called demons, but they're like spirits of the house, like they live in the fireplace, like they're one that lives in the stable, and she can see and interact with these creatures, and that makes her very odd. Like, she's a witch according to the town. And so kind of while this is going on, we kind of see her grow up basically from when she's born until she's kind of in her mid-teens. So while this is going on, there is this battle going forth between these 2 twin demons. So the first one is, I always get this name right, Moroziko, who is the Frost Demon or the Winter King, and he obviously brings winter, and then he also is the one that brings your soul, takes your soul away from your body when you die. And then Medvedev, who is known as the Bear, and he's kind of the evil twin, and he is the one that makes the dead rise and kind of brings fear throughout Russia. So I think kind of a synopsis, I think that's the best you need to know going into it. And so basically the pros that I really enjoyed about this book is that it has a very unique setting, and basically being in Russia during like the medieval times, it was really interesting to see. It's very different than the kind of typical YA fantasy with like kingdoms and all that. This one's actually based in a real place that does have some history interwoven into it, and I really enjoyed, especially from this book, we get to see Vaza grow up. And basically in the first one, it's her, in Bear and the Nightingale, it's her introduction into this world, and she's kind of thrust into it. But it's not until The Girl in the Tower where she actually kind of takes control of her life and then kind of goes from there. That's where she really grows up. And so I love seeing that transition throughout the books as well, and just especially we really get to see her grow into her own, which I think is really kind of unique as well. I feel like some books, like we kind of see them at this point in time, but for Vaza we basically kind of see her throughout this whole kind of major point in her life. This book also has a lot of little feminist twists in here. Basically Vaza likes to wear pants, which at this time, like this point in time, like was a big no-no. And like some of the things there, it's like people know she's a girl and don't expect her to be able to do things, and then she completely just like goes over it, like kind of shows them who's boss, which I really enjoyed. And I was fully engrossed in this story. It's very almost atmospheric. Like I could see myself in Russia. I was cold when the characters were cold. I was hot when it was like a blistering summer. Like I was very engrossed in this story, and you get very sucked into this world, which I think is really unique. And I like how the author explored the struggle between religion and kind of folklore and kind of the imagination stuff. I like how it showed that struggle between the church and these creatures, and kind of how Vaza is very much stuck in between these 2 worlds that are kind of fighting against each other. I thought that was really unique to explore, and kind of show how that rise in religion and Christianity was just really, really unique. And finally, I really enjoyed the writing in here. It did take me a while just to kind of get used to her writing style, but it's just very, very whimsical almost, and it's just, it paints a very good picture of this world, and I think that's really is what this trilogy stands out for me, is the writing. It's very unique and very almost kind of adult fiction-y writing styles compared to YA as well. It's very, very non-traditional YA, and it's very, very beautiful. And some of the cons in here that for the series as a whole is that it did struggle with some pacing issues, especially in this first one here. The first 150 pages, it took me a really long time to get into the story, and that's why I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. But because it does build a lot of the background, it's very slow for at least the first 150 pages. Like, the plot doesn't really start until like halfway through the book, and I feel like this problem with pacing also happens in the other books as well. Not to the extent of this one in the beginning, but there are some parts where some parts are just really quick and fast, and then some parts that aren't really adding to the story do seem to drag on a little bit, and I feel like just it got better as the novels progressed. But yeah, I'd say like that's the biggest complaint I've heard for the Bear and the Nightingale, but she does a really good job of kind of fixing that and adjusting that throughout the books as she improves her writing overall. And another thing too is that because the pacing is kind of slow in some parts, especially in the beginning, it's very confusing sometimes, and because it has in some aspects very slow world building, we're figuring out this world with Vaza as well, so there's some parts where we're still confused about what's going on, especially like even in the second book, The Girl in the Tower, there's still some parts that the world hasn't been fully developed, and like I said, that's because we're figuring it out with Vaza as well. But part of it too is very confusing. Just so you know, there is like a little glossary at the end of these. I didn't know that when I first read The Bear and the Nightingale, but it has a little glossary in there and some of the Russian terms and creatures in there. But like I said, some parts were just a little bit confusing just because of the pacing and the world building were a little slow, but that's because we're figuring out the world with Vaza as well. So that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has become one of my favorite YA, more adult trilogies, fantasy trilogies. I really loved it. I picked this one up from the library, but I'm definitely going to be getting my own copy very soon. But yeah, like I said, I was really pleasantly surprised by this. If you struggled with this one, you have to kind of push through until the halfway point, and that's when the plot really picks up. Like, trust me, you will not be disappointed. I'm very happy that I stuck it through with this book because I have fallen in love with this world. It was just so good, and I feel if I reread this series again, I feel like there would be things that I would pick up that I didn't the first time. So I think this one is very unique in the sense that you can reread it and still keep learning about this world. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and let me know what you thought about this trilogy. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye guys.